This past Monday, I went to my local shop where they were hosting Evolution Cup Volume 2 featuring all the new Digimon promos. And I got first place running Numemon. And so in today's video, I want to talk about my tournament matchups and then also showcase my deck profile on Numemon. So let's get into it. So let's have a rundown of the locals. It was 3 rounds, and I'll probably say like just straight up that this locals isn't like super competitive. We have really good players that obviously play there, but for the most part it's more of like a casual thing. And I think you can tell by the matchups I'm about to say. So round 1 I played against Beelzemon, round 2 was against Blue Flare, and round 3 was against Omnimon. Curse you, Omnimon. So let's have a rundown of how the tournament went. So my round 1 opponent was Beelzemon, and you know, like Beelzemon has the ability to just either completely pop off or it just kind of falters at the starting line. Game 1 was definitely that. My opponent didn't really get much setup available to him, and with how quick my deck is with stuff like Ukomons and the Numemon package as a whole, I was able to get through game 1 relatively quickly just by applying huge amounts of pressure and also using cards like Zenimon from shutting down his like memory game, which is very pivotal for his deck. Shutting down stuff like the Death Slinger and Wizardmons from gaining the memory, obviously a huge deal, and so I ended up winning game 1 through that control alone. Game 2 was a more close ordeal, however. I did have the early aggression that I was able to control the field with, stuff like the Shadow Seraphi, which allowed me to de-digivolve his stack and then also delete another guy. Small things like that really did help me control the early game. My opponent did end up making a bit of a comeback, however, but unfortunately just didn't have enough. My control through aces and being able to slow my opponent down that way was enough for me to take game 2 and win the round altogether as a 2-0 victory. What I will say is that from this game alone, I really figured out like floodgates are like super important in the game at the moment. Like I feel we've seen them kind of like drop off unless we're playing stuff like Gankumon control, but I think they are so powerful in the current meta, especially going into rounds 2 and 3. Round 2 was against Blue Flare, and while, you know, I have the Zenimon for memory gain other than from Tamers, I do also play the Chikurimon, and as a person that plays Digicross decks, if you see Chikurimon or Solarmon, you want to die inside. And that is what pretty much happened in game 1. I was able to establish early boards using Ukomon and Chikurimon and like Zenimon, so they can't even do like memory boosts, they can't Digicross for free, they have to Digicross for 7, and unfortunately for decks like Blue Flare, which is something that I did bring up in my old like first draft when the support got announced from BT19, I believe it was. There's just no removal in the deck, unfortunately, and so when you have these floodgate rookies out, you can't really answer them. All you can really do is just like stun them and hope that you somehow survive. And so game 1 was just a case of I play Chikuri, you lose, and that is what happened, and I win game 1. And it's the same for game 2. I essentially was able to establish similar fields going into the game as well, and my opponent did try to slow me down with stuff like the Metal Greymon, but all I have to do is just wait, and they can't really do anything. And if they were to have aces in their hand, I had stuff like the Waru Monzaemon, which allowed me to de-digivolve their stack, which meant that they didn't really have any threat going into the game. So I was able to control game 2 as well through Chikurimon, and my rookie pressure wins the second round. Round 3 was against Omnimon, and if you watch my Porto regional report, you know that not really my favorite deck. And honestly, in game 1, it kind of just proved to me why I hate playing against this deck. I did my first security check and it was the Matentai, and I was like, great, lovely. I love the fact that I swung at security and I get heavily punished for it. But my opponent pretty much had everything and anything that he needed in this game. He was easily able to go into stuff like the Omnimon, I believe it was like the Ultra-Res, swing, trash, swing again, put it to the security, do it again, and he just completely controlled game 1. Game 2 was a bit different. I believe I just kind of like had this game on lockdown. I feel like he was bricking a little bit here, just didn't really have enough pieces to go into like his Omnimon stacks and control the field. And as I have pressure with stuff like the Waru Monzaemon in this deck, he can't really threaten the ace potential here, because if it has something underneath like a Gabu or an Agumon, I can just de-digivolve and avoid that threat entirely. And that was really key in this matchup, just being able to remove these guys but not remove the Digimon as a whole slowed down my opponent enough to the point where I was able to win game 2. Game 3 was the deciding factor, and I went first. I was able to establish early boards early on. However, my opponent was able to answer my field with stuff like the Omnimon from BT22. Now, I will go to say he didn't have the end of turn DNA, so he shouldn't have been able to have done it. But at this point, like, the game was pretty much over because due to controlling his field with stuff like the Chikuris, which essentially made him pay like 11 for the Digimon that he wants to go into, really slowed him down. And he didn't have stuff like the Nokia to apply more pressure in the early game and answer my guys. And because of that, I was able to win game 3, swinging with everything, going into like Monzaemon X, swinging for 2 checks, jamming with Satsuki and enough, and just doing enough to win the game and ending my tournament run 3-0 first place. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking, and that is just the fact that these matchups aren't very competitive and not really like mainstays in tournaments unless it's like at a local level. And you would be right, but I do think that Numemon does really shine in this meta in certain situations. I mean, if you're able to win against Omnimon, I think that should be quite important because Omnimon is probably going to be one of the best decks, if not the best deck going into future formats. But just being able to slow down and be able to have whatever rookie lineup that you really need. So in my case, it was Chikuri and Zenimon controlling the memory gain and the reduced costs. Like, those two alone are very powerful currently in the game, and just being able to control most of the decks that you play against is very important. It's also important to know that the speed of the deck is still there for Numemon, and as we've seen with stuff like the Machinedramon from EX9, they tend to play just like Ukomon Rush until they're able to swing for game. Well, it's very similar in this situation with just normal Numemon. Being able to essentially establish a board early on with the Ukomons, control with the Chikuris and the Zenimons, and then being able to go into stuff like the Monzaemon, Monzae X, get 2 checks out of nowhere for relatively cheap while also playing a body is very important. And we see that with tournament results. I believe like in Australia or Oceania, they had a regional happen. I believe Numemon was in the top 8 there, so I think there is still legs to the strategy. But with that, let's go into the deck profile now, where I'll explain some of the cards and choices that I made with the deck. All right, so let's get into the deck profile. Starting off with eggs, we have the standard for Numemon. This card is broken, especially if you have multiple of them out in the field. Drawing like 2 or 3 per turn from this card alone is broken, and we have X forms in this deck, so it's usually always active, so we play 4 of it. And as we play Ukomons, we need the 5th egg. In this case is Tokomon. It's just if it would be the lead on your opponent's turn, draw 1. Decent enough. Starting with the rookies, we have 4 BT16 Ukomon, being able to reveal 3, add anything essentially, and then hatch another egg just so you can get another draw set up for another turn is pretty good. And it being 1 cost is also very broken currently in the meta, especially with stuff like Omnimon, because Omnimon wants to, you know, play Nokia out for as cheap as they can. And this card essentially just means like, if you do that, you'll give me 4 costs, and if you give me 4, I can pretty much combo. So yeah, you play 4 of this. Of course, we also play the one of Promo Ukomon. Same situation, accelerates the game state for you in the play, and also gains your memory. And the memory gain is actually important in this deck because the difference between gaining 2 and 3 memory is very, very critical to go into like level 5 plays, for example. So yep, you play one of this promo as well. Then we have our Floodgate rookies. So in my situation, I like to play 4 Chikurimon. Reducing play cost is very important, especially against decks such as like Royal Knights, Omnimon obviously, and this card is just a killer in those matchups and is really good in certain like rogue matchups as well, where they just can't really answer this card. So you play 4 of it and you can turbo it out very quickly with stuff like the Ukomon. Rounding off the rookie lineup, we have 3 Zenimon, again another Floodgate that we have in the deck. This just essentially means that if they try to gain memory throughout the combo, we say no, 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 you cannot do that. Being able to do that is very important. It slows their game plan down, and that is important because you want to outspeed them while also controlling their field. This card helps you do that, so you play it free. Now we have 4 of the RB1 Numemon. This one's a bit slower. It's on deletion, reveal, and add potentially 2 cards here, and that's okay, but realistically, like, we just need the names, and the blocker is nice as well. We need the names for stuff like the Garemon and stuff like that, so we can get draws consistently in the early game to set us up ready for the mid and late game if there is a late game. But this card is alright. It's a name, you can Digivolve on top of it, like, it does everything that you need it to do essentially. So you play 4 of it. Then we have 4 BT11 Garemon. This might be one of the best cards in the deck, honestly. Like, just being able to trash 1, draw 2 for a free cost, and also provides you with a Numemon name, just means that you're able to do a bunch of stuff with this card. Stuff like Numix, for example, just being able to trash self and stuff like that is also very important. So yeah, just being able to have like more draw is important, and you do get to play these out for free with the Monzaemon. So stuff like the, you know, this one, but also stuff like the BT14 one, this one are very impactful when you do play them. So we play it 4. Then we have 3 of the BT14 Numemon. This is kind of like your extender of the deck. This just allows you to essentially get, well, put a tamer underneath it and then one of your Digimon gain rush. It's important that it's any of your Digimon, it doesn't have to be this one specifically. So the main thing though is that you get to play the tamer for free, and the tamer is very important because it gives you jamming for all your major pieces in the deck. So you play 3 of this. Rounding up the 4 lineup, we obviously have the Numemon X Antibody. There's a reason why this card is limited. It's broken. Being able to play any Numemon from trash, which also just happens to be the Platinum Numemon. Yeah, this card is broken. It probably won't come back for a very, very, very long time, and there's a good reason for it. So you play the 1 copy you can of it. Going into 5s now, we have RB1 Monzaemon. This card just does everything you need it to do. You can play this for a 5 cost. You don't do that much these days, but it's still, being able to do that is nice. Have a 5, threaten a ace for 5 is nice, but also has security at -1 and -3k DP when you do play it. So it could just slow your opponent down, and it does a really good job in that. Yeah, you play 4 of it. It is the best Monzaemon that you can potentially play. Then we have 4 Monzaemon X Antibody. This is the best card in the deck, bar none. This card just enables everything that you need to do in the early game. You get to play a guy out, which is Numemon or a level 3, so you can play literally most of the deck out for free. And when you do play a Digimon, you do -2k DP for every Digimon in play. This card can delete stuff like that's like -18, -20 at some points. And this card is just broken, and this is what makes the strategy work. The also important thing is that the Monzaemon and the Warrior Monzaemon, which I'm going to show you soon, also has security at +1 if it's a Monzaemon or Numemon in name. So essentially this just becomes a 2-checker, play a guy for free, clear a guy. Yeah, what's not to love about this card? You play it 4. Now we have 2 Waru Monzaemon, and this one is a bit more interesting for me. The reason why I played this is because of the D-Digivolve 1. The D-Digivolve 1 is very pivotal for this deck currently, especially with matchups that, you know, for example, Omnimon obviously being the main one. Just being able to D-Digivolve 1 is good enough interruption on your opponent's turn most of the time, stop them from doing ace plays, but you can do this with like most of the other decks as well. So being able to stop that is nice, and you can do it from either trash or hand. So yeah, it works out, does it very well, and you play it 2. Rounding up the lineup, we have 2 Etamon. Yeah, this card is essentially the panic button for all your opponents, because you play this card, they go, oh no, I have to attack. And when you attack, what do? You go into your aces, right? This card is essentially just a problematic card for your opponent. You play it 2. Going into 6s, we have 2 Platinum Nume. This is, I guess, become less and less popular because obviously Nume X is now limited to 1, but still being able to go into this for essentially just 1 cost is nice. And then if it gets deleted, play a Monzaemon for free. Like playing a Monzaemon for free, it's insanely good because usually you'll gain some memory from that as well. So yeah, very efficient card in the deck, a big combo card in the deck, and you play it 2. Then we get on to aces, and the first one is going to be 2 Valkyremon Ace. This is essentially just a ruin mode, but for the turn, not for until the end of your turn. But also this has some really nice things going for it, mainly the all turns effect where you can delete a Digimon, but if it doesn't delete, you can gain security at +1. Just gives you that additional aggression when you need it the most. So yeah, I play at 2 in my deck. Then we have 2 Shadow Seraphimon. This is kind of like your mega defensive ace that you'll play. D-Digivolve 3 is broken. I mean, we used to play like Ultimate Flare back in the day just because it had D-Digivolve 3. This is on a Digimon, but also it has blocker, and when you attack target changes, you can then do -5k DP to another Digimon, which means you essentially get to get rid of like 2 bodies with this card, and it's really good for that. So we play it at 2. Going on to Tamers, we have 1 Louis. We only play 1 of this in the deck, obviously, but this just allows you to increase the speed of your aggression. There's been multiple times where like I've gone turn 1 Ukomon, and then turn 2 I have Swing in the Back, play Louis, gain like an additional search or something like that, and then also be able to control my opponent that way, and then also pass them to 1. Yeah, this card is broken, and you play at 1. We then have 3 Satsuki. This is your Mind Link target for the BT14 Numemon, but this is essentially just another way to gain memory, but also protection. If your opponent has a Digimon in play, gain a memory, and then you can Mind Link this to a Numemon or Monzaemon. If you go into stuff like Monzaemon, and then you have the Monzaemon underneath. You're able to go for 2 checks, jamming, so you can't really get answered. So this card is broken in the deck, and when you find it, you feel like the game's a lot more easier, so you play it at free. We then have 2 proto forms. Yeah, this is still very important in the deck. Like, I think for the most part, you would rather go into Monzae than Monzae X. However, unfortunately, sometimes you just don't have that option. Being able to digivolve into the Monzae X for 2, play a guy out for free, continue your turn, and do all that good stuff is good enough. So you play 2 of it. It increases the speed of the deck, but also provides you with protection because it goes to security after. You get to add on the stack back. It's important. You play it at 2. And rounding off the deck list, we have 2 Sepia Memory Boost. Look, it features 2 of the Digimon of the deck, so it fits the deck, right? Yeah, this card is just searching pretty much everything in the deck because everything is either yellow or black, and the gain 2 memory is nothing to scoff at as well, especially when you're trying to go for your massive turns to control the field, essentially, because sometimes if your opponent's smart, they'll put you to 1 or 2, which means they limit you in what you can essentially do unless you have a certain combination of cards. So being able to play the Sepia Memory Boost to essentially navigate through that is important, and the search is obviously really good as well. So you play it too. And so that was my deck profile for Numemon in the current meta of BT22, but I don't think anything's going to be changing anytime soon. So is there anything that I would change with this deck going forward? Well, it was quite interesting because when I was tinkering with the deck and when I came to the conclusion that I didn't really need Medieval Gallantmon, I was like, that's a weird one because this deck just plays a lot of things for free and you can trigger on your opponent's turn relatively easy. And also just helps in current matchups as well. Stuff like, again, Omnimon, Gallant stuff, like it does have an impact in the meta. So if you were to like maybe add some more cards, maybe look at a Medieval Gallantmon, but also maybe look at the level 7 lineup. Like potentially you can add stuff like, you know, the Valderon, for example, the Ruin mode, which would help shut down games completely. Like these are options that you can take, but I didn't really find myself needing them that much. But I think the major thing with this deck is that depending on what your playgroup is, you can tailor the deck towards that playgroup essentially. But yeah, that is my tournament overview of Evolution Cup at my local game store with Numemon. What do you think of the deck? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? What would you like to add to the deck in the future? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.